All right, folks, welcome to the biggest review I've ever done. And by that, I mean the review of the biggest item I've ever done. So we're here today to look at the Kimbo camper. And I've really been mulling this over for the last couple days. Like, what's the theme of this review? And I think it's a two-part review. The first question is a camper a worthwhile utility for a backcountry style hunter? And number two, if a camper is a worthwhile addition to your toolkit, is the Kimbo the best choice? Now, before we dive into this review, I want to take a moment to remind you that if you stay tuned until the end, I'm going to tell you how you can enter for a chance to win this Sig Sauer Oscar 6 image stabilized spotting scope. So we're going to walk through my experience with this camper, from loading it to taking it out in the field to unloading it, sleeping in it on the truck, off the truck, all those details. But before that, let me talk a little bit about my current setup and how it works for me and what some of the holes are. So I drive a 2022 GMC Sierra AT4 Duramax diesel with a 6'4" box. Now it's got a 6-inch BDS suspension lift and 35-inch tires. I have an extended height canopy on the back, and I have two trailers that I use depending on the circumstances. One is like not an ultralight quad trailer, but like a lightweight, kind of low frame metal box ATV trailer when I just want to haul my ATV. And then I've got a 6x12 enclosed tandem axle cargo trailer when I'm taking a bunch more gear or if I want to sleep in the back. And the whole reason I bought the standard box instead of the short box in the AT4 is that I like sleeping in the back of my truck. And I'm 6'1", which means I need a box of at least 6 feet and ideally a couple more inches than that. Now, I love sleeping in my canopy. And that's why I've got the quad trailer, because I can't put the quad in the back of the truck. So the compromise here is you're always trying to find a way to carry your gear, give you someplace convenient to sleep at the trailhead, but also carry your ATV with you when you go. So recognizing all of that, we're gonna see how the Kimbo fit into my system throughout this year's hunting season. So, as usual, let's talk testing protocol. So Kimbo lent me this camper for 3 months. So I took it to Montana on an archery elk hunt with my buddy Ben. I then had it in British Columbia for some scouting. I then took it back to Montana with my mother and my daughter for a cow elk rifle hunt. And then I had it back in British Columbia for 2 weeks while I was doing more mule deer scouting, and then finally used it on some mule deer hunts. So I have had ample opportunity to put this thing through its paces. So let's dive into the loading and the setup of this camper on the back of your truck. So just for the record, I am running a GMC Sierra AT4 with a 6'4" box. And basically, this fits with room to spare. There's a little bit of room there. And if we come around here, basically right up there. So let's talk about first how you get this in and out. So there's these two poles on the outside that have these little, wait for this to pull focus, these little mechanisms with these bolts. And I'm gonna show you, let me show you real quickly how you actually do this. So you take a power drill, it's got this little socket attachment with this little T kind of cutout. You put this on here and you use 2 drills at the same time, and then you can see then you just slip it in reverse and then it comes all the way back up. You gotta be careful. When this thing gets near the top, you gotta slow down because it will break your wrist on this drill. So slow down. There you go. So, and then that just slides off like that. So you need 2 drills to get this thing on and off. Now, when you go to strap it in, there's basically these heavy duty ratchet straps come through these D loops, and then you take it down and put it through just one of your, one of these things on the side of your truck. And you do that all the way around. So you basically lift it way up in the air, back up underneath it, lower it down, drive in. And then for this model, it's sitting on this, it's almost like a little decked thing. This is a separate mechanism. So there is drawers in here that slide out. I'm gonna give you my thoughts on those later. And then there's this rubber mat that sits on top. That just sits in your truck. You dump this thing on top, and then you use these 4 straps to go in. Now, one of the things I wanna mention is that once you get this completely dialed in, you can load it or unload it in about 10 minutes. It's really pretty straightforward. The one benefit that might be nice, and I'm not sure how much this would change the price, but if each of these legs had motors that were synchronized, so you could basically just lift all 4 at the same time, instead of like running back and forth with the 2 drills. However, when you have 2 guys and you each have 1 drill, it's actually extremely convenient. Now that the camper's loaded and strapped in, what are my travel experiences with it? So first and foremost, my truck drives fantastic with this camper on the back. It weighs about 1,000 pounds, and in my full-size pickup with the extra suspension from the lift kit, I don't even really feel it back there. It gets a little boaty feeling sometimes if I make super sharp corners, but I still have lots of power and the maneuverability is still great. One of the drawbacks is the camper does slide around. When I put this on, this was square. So this was flush with this, and this was flush with this under here. And if you look on the side, this has slid out like 3 or 4 inches, and this is slid back like 4 inches. And I find the whole thing has a tendency to twist depending on what the predominant wind direction is. And then you're not supposed to have these crazy tight, but it doesn't matter how tight you have these, it still shifts around on you. These were originally developed for like a Tacoma style pickup, and I just don't think they fit very well in the bed of a full-size pickup. I think what you need is some like extendable braces to go in here to kind of force it to stay in the middle, and the same thing front to back. Also, it's pretty noisy when you're driving at full speed. I'm wondering, there's a fairly significant gap between the front portion of the camper and the top of my cab, and I'm wondering if you installed like a flexible rubber air dam to cover that gap, if that would help reduce some of the noise. And finally, the major hit is fuel economy, which you're gonna run into no matter what you're towing. To give you an idea, in mountain conditions with my truck, just canopy loaded with gear, I average about 12 liters per 100 kilometers, which translates to about 20 miles per gallon. When I put the camper on the back, I get about 20 liters per 100 kilometers or 12 miles per gallon. So my fuel efficiency reduces by about 40%, which actually almost doubles the cost of your fuel. And I know that math seems a little bit weird, but if you're half as fuel efficient, you're burning twice as much fuel. So I noticed on big road trips, my fuel bill absolutely went through the roof. So that's something to keep in mind with something like this. Like if you were really only gonna spend 1 or 2 nights in it and you're driving 1,000 kilometers, you're better off just grabbing a night at a hotel. You're actually gonna save money in the long run. However, I do wanna reiterate, this is about the same as if I'm pulling, let's say like an 18 or 20 foot travel trailer. I also get about 12 miles per gallon. But if I'm pulling my lightweight ATV trailer, my fuel economy really only reduces by like 10 to 15%, which is another one of the main reasons why the combo of the canopy with the lightweight ATV trailer has been such a good solution for me. Now, before we dive into my experience actually spending time inside the unit, a quick note about forged in the backcountry base boxers. All sizes are finally back in stock and shipping as we speak. All back orders have been filled. And if you want to get some for someone you care about in time for Christmas, as long as you order in the next 7 to 10 days, I will get them sent out the same day your order comes in, and it should be no problem getting your boxers delivered by Christmas. All right, let's start with the external features. So you can have fuel canisters or water canisters. I opted for water canisters. So I got 5 gallons here of water, 5 gallons there. There's an awning on the top that comes out there. And then, give me a second and I'll walk around the front here. We have a Joule hot water heater that you can use for an outdoor shower. You got the ladder to get up top. You can store another 7 gallons of water up there. However, it makes it a bit front heavy. You can take this thing off your truck and just have it on the 4 stilts and use it like that. But if you leave that water full, it's gonna make it a little bit front heavy and you're gonna need a stilt under the front. So there's one solar panel, another solar panel, and there is a vent with a fan on top of the roof. So a couple notes with that. Awning was on the side. I would prefer it on the back so you can have your cooking area and your gear storage area right outside of your entrance. I think that would be much more convenient. I think there should be a privacy curtain mount for the heated shower outside. And I would love just a couple of external bubble levels. Maybe one on the back and one on the front left corner, so that when you're trying to place your vehicle, you can just hop out and check some external levels. I think that would help a lot. And then finally, we have to pay some respect to the construction quality. This thing is like zombie apocalypse proof. Everywhere you go, people comment on it. I cannot stop at a gas station without some old dude coming over, wanting to talk for 15 minutes, hop inside, have a look. But when you spend time in this thing and you examine the construction quality of it, it is mind-blowing. Like, you'd be hard-pressed to convince me that there's a camper out there with a higher build quality than this one. Next up, let's talk interior features. All right, let's go take a look inside. All right, I'm just gonna start on one side and kind of walk through the features all the way to the other side. So I do like all these little organization baskets that they've got hung all over the place. Over here, we have the power box. So it charges off the solar charger, and then you can charge your devices off that. It runs this fridge. It runs the fan for the stove, and then it also controls this roof fan. So there is a portable water tank here that you can use, and then this faucet is powered by the power bank as well. And then just outside here, there's a hose just around the corner that'll dump your gray water outside. And then before, I mentioned the fridge. I would say, as long as you have a relatively open sky, like, it doesn't have to be a bluebird day, but if it's like pissing rain, the solar power is not gonna keep up with your needs. You're gonna need some kind of shore power, you're gonna need to bring a generator, something. But if it's relatively clear at least every other day, you will be able to leave this fridge on the whole time. You'll be able to run the lights, you'll be able to charge your laptop, you'll be able to do everything you wanted to do. The solar power was definitely sufficient given a reasonable amount of sun. So now let's talk about the bed situation. So here's the main bed. It's a very nice size for 2 people or 1 person and a child. I should say for a couple or a parent and a child. Obviously 2 dudes couldn't sleep in there. And then I've got 2 planks under here. Those planks go in right here and here. And then these extra 2 mattresses go on top. Now, this was one of my frustrations. Here's the deal. I think for this to be the ultimate hunting rig, it needs to be set up to sleep 2 grown men, because I think that's the most common combination that people hunt in, right? It's like you and a buddy. Obviously, you and a buddy are not sleeping in the big bed. The problem with this bed down here is that you have the power unit, let's call this on the head side here, and then you have the fridge on the foot side here.
So Buddy has to sleep in this like convoluted, like fetal position. He, like, if that power bank was over here or that fridge was over here, you would have a nice big rectangle to sleep. But you don't. My buddy Ben had to sleep in here. He got it done. It was not ideal. I think the ultimate setup, and I'm gonna try and spend some more time like collecting my thoughts as far as like exactly what I would wanna do this to make this the perfect hunting rig. But I think you actually need to run 2 beds in this upper platform parallel here and here, and keep the middle empty. Turn this into storage area up here, and then have 2 bunks that would maybe start here and go up to the front, and start here and go up to the front, and have like a little walkway between those 2 bunks. And that way you could sleep 1 grown man on each side. And I think that would be the ideal setup. Now, lastly, as far as the interior elements, let's take a look at the stove. So this is a Newport stove by Dickinson, a really high quality marine stove, gets run on propane. There is a compartment right here that holds a 30-pound propane cylinder, and 30 pounds was lots. I never had to go fill it up. It worked really well for me. Here's the problem with that stove. When it is on, it is on. And when it's off, it is off. Even at that stove's lowest setting, if you are sleeping in the upper bunk and you turn that thing on, after 15 minutes, this place turns into a sauna. And then you shut it off and you wake up half an hour later and you're freezing cold. A lot of the thoughts I have around this unit are that it fits in a weird place between being like great for a solo shelter, but almost overkill for a solo shelter. Like, there's part of me that thinks I would be just as well off inside my canopy. But then it's like, well, what if you want to bring somebody with you? Well, I tried to take my mom and my daughter in something like this, and it was like, I left them in it and I went and slept in a cargo trailer. I came in here in the morning and they were like, it was not good. It was a late season Montana elk hunt, and basically they were trying to run the stove, but they would run it for 10 minutes, they would get blown out with heat, they would shut it off, and they'd wake up half an hour later shivering and freezing cold. And they just cycled through that process all night. So one of my big beefs is that there is no regulation for the heat in here. And I think if I was gonna run something like this full time, that would be a deal breaker for me. Like, you need a regulated heat source so that you can turn it on, go to sleep, it's gonna stay relatively warm, and you can get a good night's sleep. Again, if you wanna rough it and you don't care about sleeping through the cold, I don't care about sleeping through the cold. Well, then I don't need to put a 1,000-pound camper on the back of my truck. I can just sleep in my canopy with Mr. Heater, like one of those heater buddy things. I do that all the time. The other problem is room. Like, you cannot sit here and here, let me see if I can show you. So here's the problem. You can't sit here. And so if you're in here with 2 grown men and there's 1 grown man down here trying to do something like cook dinner, do whatever, there's no room to do something else. Because the other thing is, like, where's all your stuff, right? I usually had at least 1 tote of gear or a couple backpacks or something. Because remember, you don't have the box of your truck anymore to keep your stuff in. So you have some stuff in here. Right now it doesn't look too bad because it's completely empty, but it's never completely empty in here when you're actually using it. And so if one guy can't sit here while the other guy does something, you're forced to, you can lay down, obviously, but it's like, feels a bit weird, feels a bit awkward. Like, I think this either needs to be 6 inches higher, or you need to figure out a way to drop this down 6 inches to turn this upper unit into seatable terrain, because that would increase the utility of the whole space. And like I was mentioning earlier, one of the issues with this being built for a Tacoma and then in the back of a full-size pickup truck is that I feel like I have complaints about it, but I feel like they're almost not fair complaints because it wasn't designed for a truck this size. You could probably increase the internal volume of this unit by like 20%
just by taking advantage of how much extra room there is in the box of this pickup truck. Like, it doesn't go out to the wheel wells. It doesn't go all the way to the tailgate. I'm up over the cab in the truck. Like, everything could be extended 6 to 8 inches, which would give you a ton more room in here. One nice combination that really worked is like me and my daughter. For one parent and a kid, this was actually a really great setup because I could run the stove in the middle of the night and keep her warm. She can sit up here and watch her iPad while I cook dinner, no problem. So for that particular setup, and she's not gonna sleep in the back of my canopy in my truck with me. So again, that's why it falls in this really odd place of like too comfy for some setups, but not comfy enough for other setups.
So other than the notes I've already mentioned, I would like to add, it was as quick and easy as it is to unload, it's not super stable when it's only on those 4-post legs. And I think they should add maybe like some small jacks underneath the actual, bottom of the camper itself. Or you could even just carry some of those little like pallet squares that people stick under their fifth wheel trailers to help leveling it for some added stabilization support. Because it definitely, like getting in and out and rolling around in bed, it does tend to get a little wobbly when it's only on those 4 posts. Okay, before we dive into what worked and what didn't, quick update about Mindful Hunter outfitting. So I am having my once a year sale. So for the month of December, you will get $500 off all of my bear and deer hunts. And if 2 people book together, I will give you an additional $250 off for a total discount of $750. Now this applies to any deer or bear hunt booked by December 31st for the 2026 season. So to get your booking in or just get more details from me, shoot me an email, j@mindfulhunter.com. So what did I like about this thing? It's super warm. It's very convenient. When you pull into a trailhead late at night, it's easy to hop in the back and just pass out. When you're on a big road trip and you want to just pull over and get a few hours sleep, you can just pull into a gas station, pass out in the back. One of the inconveniences with hotel rooms is that when you're on your way to a hunting trip, you can't leave all that stuff in your truck. If anything significant gets stolen, your whole trip is over. So I end up doing 5 or 6 trips into a hotel room every time I get a hotel to bring all my gear inside and then bring it all back out in the morning. And I hate that. So I love the fact that when I'm sleeping in the camper, I can literally just sleep with my gear. I don't need to move anything at all. Also, the durability. I felt super confident in this thing. I didn't worry about driving under branches at the odd time. I didn't worry about going down bumpy logging roads. I was just supremely confident in this thing. It is built like a tank. Now, what didn't work for me? So fitment in a full-size truck. I would love to see one of these that's optimized for the standard box size. I think you'd get about 20% more internal volume. And instead of having that spacer under the bottom to lift it up 6 inches, just extend the bottom of it 6 inches so that you can get that extra headroom up top when you're sleeping over the cab. Because that really was a limiting factor in how much usable volume there was inside. Next, as I mentioned before, the interior layout. I really think the sweet spot for the hunting market with a camper would be 2 single beds. That really is the most common setup for dudes, like one guy and his hunting partner. And I think if you had a rig that was optimized for a pairing like that, it would be a lot more popular among hunters and just a lot more usable in general. And then finally, the wind was kind of annoying, but it wasn't a deal breaker. The fuel economy for me was a surprise. I would have thought I would have had better fuel economy than when I tow my big cargo trailer. And the fact that the fuel economy was a little bit worse surprised me. I'm thinking it's probably a function. You are carrying 1,000 pounds, so you're gonna, use more horsepower. And also, I think the wind resistance was the main thing. And I think that's why my small ATV trailer has such a mild impact on my fuel economy, because it just doesn't create any drag behind your truck. And I think having this big camper, just this huge, air buffer sticking up above your truck really smokes your fuel economy. So who is the Kimber meant for and who is it not? If you are a diehard solo hunter or somebody who spends the vast majority of your time hunting in the backcountry, I don't think you're really gonna get the full use out of a camper. Like, that is a lot of what I do. And I might spend a night at the trailhead when I first get there and maybe, on the way home, or maybe I'll come out mid-trip for one night. But on a 10 to 12 day backcountry trip, at most, I'm gonna spend 2 nights in my vehicle. And for those purposes, I can just crawl in the canopy. And if I need to, fire up a buddy heater. And so to drag this camper all the way down and pay for all the additional fuel is just really not worth it. And that's not a comment on a Kimbo, that's a comment on campers in general. Also, I think families. You know, I took my mother and my daughter to Montana, as I mentioned earlier, and this thing was just not ideal. You know, part of the big theme of this review is that the camper is too posh for a solo hunter, but not posh enough for a family setup. And when I had my mother and my daughter and myself, which would be a similar setup to like mom, dad, and kid, it wasn't big enough inside. We were kind of tripping over each other. The lack of a thermostat on the stove was kind of a deal breaker for me because it just wasn't consistently comfortable for, you know, a mom and a daughter overnight. So I think big family setups, probably not the ideal setup, and hardcore solo hunters or hardcore backcountry hunters, also probably not the ideal market. Now, there is a ton of hunters who do, and I don't want to call them road hunters, but these guys that set up in fifth wheels or drag a bunch of gear to the trailhead, and they primarily day hunt. Like there's a ton of elk hunters who just don't bivvy hunt. They'll wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, hike 3 hours in, hunt all day, and hike 3 hours out because they can go in with lighter packs, they can have a more comfortable trailhead setup. I think if you're this kind of guy, I think the Kimbo is a home run. Somebody else that came to mind, a good buddy of mine, Matt, who's come up on guided hunts a couple times this year. He lives in Minnesota and he's got a bunch of private land access for antelope in North Dakota and a couple other places that are all like less than 10 hours drive from his home. When he gets there, he primarily day hunts while truck camping. And we were talking about it while he was up here because I still had the unit. And he was like, this thing is absolutely perfect for what I do. So I think if you're primarily a day hunter of any kind and you spend a lot of time truck camping, either in a trailer or a wall tent, or you've got a tricked out cargo trailer that you built for yourself, I think the Kimbo could be an excellent option. I also think just couples, like if you hunt with your wife or if you're like an overlanding couple, the Kimbo as it sits right now, I think was really built for couples in mind because you got the great double bed, there's lots of room. It's just, you don't mind being in a cramped space with your significant other because you're a little bit more of an intimate relationship. You're kind of used to tripping over each other anyways. So I think it's great. And then finally, a dad and his kid. Like I took my daughter in this thing by myself and it was perfect because we're both gonna sleep in the same bed. She's short enough that she can sit up in the over cab bed, watch her iPad, hang out while I'm downstairs like cooking on the main floor. And so, yeah, I think for a father with one or two kids or a mother with 1 or 2 kids, like a one parent, 1 to 2 kids setup, I think the Kimbo again is a fantastic option. So what do you think I should try next? There's definitely some other campers out there on the market. I've been thinking maybe I should do a series about building out my cargo trailer, putting some heat in there, maybe putting a water system in there, building some flip up bunks. I don't know. Should I go full bore and just see if I can put my hands on like an ultralight trailer for review? Drop some notes in the comment section below. But before you go, remember, I told you I was gonna tell you how you could win the SIG Oscar 6 spotter. So here's the deal. If you just go to mindful-reviews.com, pick any one of the subscription plans and sign up before December 31st, 2025, you will be automatically entered to win this spotting scope. If you appreciate these non-biased, unsponsored gear reviews I do, and you want to see more of them, the best way to support me in that goal is by joining Mindful Reviews. So again, you go to mindful-reviews.com, pick any subscription plan, join up, and you will be automatically entered to win the SIG spotting scope. All right, folks, there you have it. My thoughts from running the Kimbo trailer over 3 months this hunting season. I hope you found that, educational, and it's going to help you make a purchasing decision moving forward and help you decide whether or not something like this is for you or not. If you could engage with the content in any way, shape, or form, like, comment, share, subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. And as always, thank you for tuning in.